Hello and welcome to Scran, the podcast passionate about the Scottish food and drink scene. I'm your host, Rosalind, and on this very special bonus episode of Scran, we are heading north. This year, Cardhu celebrates 200 years of producing whisky. Licensed in 1824, it was the first distillery to be officially pioneered by a woman. And what better way to mark this special occasion than by celebrating all women pioneers, and 3 in particular.
How can we make coffee even better? How can we follow international trends? How can we support farmers and always make sure, our customers have a good experience? It's definitely job satisfaction to taste great coffee every day as part of my job.
I went along to Cardhu Distillery to meet with 3 women who are making waves in their respective industries. As part of this year's celebrations, the team at Cardhu welcomed in the local community to hear from these modern trailblazers. Fashion designer Siobhan McKenzie, owner of Ujama Spice, Jawahir Al-Mauly, and founder of Deer Green Coffee, Lawson.
She wasn't able to afford the license to do it. She still found a way to do what she was passionate about, and that really, really resonated with me.
But before we hear more from them and their amazing journeys, I caught up with Assistant Experience and Events Manager for Cardhu, Jo Henderson, to hear all about this historic whisky and this significant milestone. Jo, we're here to celebrate 200 years of Cardhu, so for anyone that hasn't listened to the podcast before or doesn't know, could you take us back to the start and tell us about the history?
So back in 1811, Helen and John Cumming had a farm, the Cardhu farm, and while John was farming, Helen would start distilling whisky. So this was illegal, so we are technically only celebrating 200 years of legal distilling. So they did illegal distillation for about 13 years, and it was in 1824 that we got our licence. Now, they were caught several times for illicit distilling, and it was always John who got the blame, because it was never thought that a woman could be doing such a thing. So while they were distilling illegally to help the community, because a lot of people in the area were distilling illicitly, when the customs and excise men came to the door, Helen would hide away her whisky equipment. She would cover herself in flour and pretend that she was baking bread. This gave her a chance to invite the men in and give them some of the bread, and then she would run into the garden and raise a red flag on the flagpole, which let everyone in the area know that the customs and excise men were coming, which is why you see a female flying the red flag on our bottles today. So 1824, we were distilling legally, and it was Helen that was still running this operation. And when her husband died, John, her son Lewis carried on with the distilling of the whisky alongside Helen. And when he passed away, it was his wife Elizabeth that carried it on. And she was the one who really drove it to become the brand that we see today. So in 1884, they were struggling to keep up with production in the space they had. They needed to expand. So that's when they purchased this piece of land here and they built the distillery. So she carried on distilling her whisky, creating a bigger brand. She trademarked the term Cardhu, but also she was a key part in the community as well, really supporting the local area. And Helen lived a very long life and was affectionately known as Granny Cumming to the locals.
We'll hear more from Jo shortly when I, quite happily, get to taste the new bottling they have released to mark this anniversary. But first, here's my chat with Siobhan McKenzie, an award-winning Scottish fashion designer known for her modern take on tartans and kilts. She has dressed A-list celebrities such as Jared Leto and Shania Twain, as well as our National Commonwealth Games team and many more high-profile people. Comparable to the work carried out at Cardhu, I started by asking her how she goes about modernising such a sacred and respected part of Scottish heritage. You'll also hear reference to a video each of the women we're meeting featured in to celebrate the pioneering spirit.
For me, respecting the tradition is a massive part of what I do. When I was a fashion student, I trained in traditional kilt making with Glenila Kilts, and I spent a day a week with each part of the team, and very much like whisky, every single part of the process is as important as the last one to make it what it is. So I learned the traditional craft first and understood that before trying to implement anything different with it. And for me, I have to credit that as being one of the best things I could have done, because I think if you try to change something as iconic as the kilt without the correct understanding, I think that could go wrong. So the traditional part of it is incredibly important to me and what I do.
Much like whisky making too, you work in a very male-dominated industry. So how important is it for you to celebrate women pioneers like Cardhu is doing to celebrate its 200th anniversary?
It's incredibly important, and I absolutely loved the origin story of Cardhu and Helen. And to think these days it's tough being a woman in a male-dominated industry. I can't imagine what it must have been like 200 years ago. She just sounds like an absolute legend. I think I would have quite liked her as a business mentor. But it's incredibly important that we forge our own path as women. When I started my company 10 years ago, women were 50% less likely to start a company in Scotland than men. So I hope myself and the other pioneers and other women in business in Scotland can pave the way for other women, younger women, and any aged women to start a business and then take that leap of faith.
And what defines a pioneer for you?
For me, a pioneer is just stepping outside of the box and not being afraid of doing that, not being afraid to try something different. One of my main sources of inspiration since I was young is Vivienne Westwood, and ironically not for the tartan at all. It was for her stance as a designer where she wasn't afraid to do something different and a little bit wacky. And her first runway shows, people laughed. They laughed at her, and she didn't care. And I think you have to have that as a designer or anyone in business, to hone your own style and run with that and not be like everyone else.
You'll hear more from Siobhan now, recorded later on at the wonderful event when host Julia Bryce asked her about the network who support her.
My most important network for me has always been my family. So age of 10, I'm going to be a fashion designer, and my mum, my dad and my sister were like, okay. They didn't ever question me or try and change my mind, or just always supported that. And even I was really unwell as a teenager, and my uni application, my art teacher had put me down as a predicted fail. And when I went and I said, why would you do that? Like, you know what my dream is. And he was like, you will never get into college, you won't get into uni, you're not going to be a fashion designer. I say smiling because, I believed in myself, but my family believed in me too. And that took me a long way.
God, that really got me in the feels there. I really feel that. I really hope he knows now what you've done.
Yeah, our mum was like, take your first class honours degree to school.
I think too. And it's so nice to talk to your sisters here tonight as well, which is so lovely. So lovely.
Next up, I spoke to Jawahir Al-Mauly, founder of Ujama Spice. She sources and sells single origin, ethical and traceable spices directly from farmers in Zanzibar. Her story is truly one of perseverance, empathy and a passion born out of wanting to see a fairer world of trade open up. Here she is talking about her ethical food company.
I am ethnically from Zanzibar, and Zanzibar is actually historically known as the Spice Islands. Before the revolution, we were actually thriving in terms of like spice trading. However, in 1964, when the revolution happened, everything went downhill economically, politically, and there was just no more like stability on the islands, and a lot of spice farmers were like suffering from that. To me, growing up, spice was such a big part of my culture, of my whole life, and I just wanted to bring Zanzibar back onto the map for all the right reasons, and I wanted to bring the elements of spice trading back, but just this time around make it more fair for everyone and just do it better than how it was done beforehand. And that's what really made me start Ujama Spice. I wanted Zanzibar to no longer rely on the very corrupt tourism model that they currently have, and I wanted to give the farmers on the islands a lot more agency over their products and their livelihoods. And yes, so now I work directly with them, I source their spices, I sell them in the UK, and I try to give them a much more fair price for their products.
That's the important reason why you ethically source your products, to do with the farmers and everything that's happened before.
Yes, very much so. However, the issues that I'm trying to solve right now are more than just Zanzibar. Spices are a global issue. You know, there's a lot of like spice producing countries around the world who are basically going the exact same thing that the Zanzibari farmers are going through. So what I'm trying to do is have a more global impact. I'm starting with Zanzibar because Zanzibar is what I know. However, from that, I hope I can duplicate that model to other countries. I hope I can expand my sourcing map. And I just want to help as many farmers as I possibly can, because this is not only affecting Zanzibar, it's affecting everyone involved, not only spice producing countries, but also spice consuming countries like the UK.
Which brings me nicely on to my next question, which is, you're the first company in the UK to do what you're doing. So what could other businesses learn from you?
That it can be done. And just because nobody has done it before doesn't mean that you can't do it. And I would say, look at so many other examples who actually started out as like very niche markets. For example, like coffee. If you remember how coffee was beforehand, especially specialty coffee to what it is now, you know, it had to take one person to try that, right? And look at it now. So again, just because no one has done it before doesn't mean you cannot try, and you should, and it will go somewhere.
So can you tell us a bit about uses of spices that people might not really think of?
You know, when I actually first started this journey with Ujama Spice, when I first began, I'm not afraid to admit it, because I feel I was a bit ignorant as well. I actually thought spices were mainly just used in food products like cooking. But from that date up until now, this whole journey has taught me so much about like the spice industry and the uses of spices. Spices can be used in so many different products, not only just cooking, but also in like your nutritional drinks as well. You know, you've got the turmeric shot. You also have it in like beauty products. If you look at your shampoo bottle, some of it, like we use moringa, and moringa has so many health benefits. But also, importantly, especially tonight, it's actually used in the cocktails that people will be trying. And I think they're using the cardamom, the nutmeg, and the cinnamon. And just a side note, our nutmeg actually just won 3 stars from the Great Taste Awards, which I'm very proud about.
Congratulations. That's like a good award.
Yeah, we're so proud. Like, I remember when they called me, I was just crying on the phone, because like, I think they said there was over 13,000 people who applied, and only like 1.8% got 3 stars. So it's quite an achievement for Ujama, and it's like that validation that we really needed for our product as well.
So can you see parallels between your business and the women who started Cardhu?
I actually see quite a parallel between myself and Helen. Because while she is in a very different industry, when I was reading her story and when I found out that she had the means to distill, however, she wasn't able to afford the license to do it, she still found a way to do what she was passionate about. And that really, really resonated with me, because just like her, I have the means to help all these farmers, you know, in Zanzibar, but where my company is at right now, I cannot like go against the big guys, you know. They have a lot more money than I do. However, that did not stop me from doing what I'm doing, and I still said, you know what, I'm going to go against the grain, and I'm just going to do it because it's what I'm passionate about. So yes, definitely, I see a parallel between myself and Helen.
And what advice would you give to someone just starting out?
Do it. Do it. It might seem hard. It might seem, especially if your idea is very innovative, and if you are a pioneer, and you're going to see signs everywhere of things telling you not to go forward, not to do what you want to do, not to follow that passion. And all I'm going to say is, why not? Just go for it. And it's going to be hard, but it's going to be worth it. So I don't know you, but you have my full approval. And if I can do it, I feel like anyone can.
Okay, we're with Jawahir, and she's having a cocktail that features some of your spices. Tell us about it.
I'll take a quick sip and let you know. Oh, that's gorgeous. That is so good. Yeah, you never really think about like spices being in like, you know, beverages like this, like cocktails and stuff, but oh my god, it works so well. And I can really like taste the nutmeg coming through, and I'm honestly just so impressed. It's so good. Yeah. The biggest challenge for me is being constantly put in a box And that is because Ujama is so young. We're doing something that's so different that people aren't used to. And whenever people first hear about me, especially when it comes to like investment or grants and that sort of thing, they always put me in a box where they're like, oh, it's a cute little family business. Like, they don't see where I'm going with this, what my ambitions are, and what I'm trying to do. And it goes back to the whole, like, sometimes you just need that to make you think, like, you know what, watch me. And so that challenge for me was like, it got to a point where I was actually starting to believe it, like, okay, maybe I am not going to do much, but sometimes you just need the right person to pay attention to you, and it just helps you just skyrocket. But yeah, definitely fighting the whole being put in a box and making sure I do not stay in there, and I know what Ujama is going to do, and I'm going to go for it.
The final of our 3 modern pioneers is Lisa Lawson, whom you may have heard from on the podcast before. Lisa set up Deer Green Coffee in Glasgow more than 10 years ago and is still at the helm of this thriving forerunner. Following that, you'll hear more from the panel session that took place at the celebration event. Hello Lisa, welcome back to Scran.
Thanks for having me.
One of the reasons you set up your coffee business, Deer Green, is you couldn't find the quality of coffee you were looking for. How important is it to you for your product to be the best it can be?
Yeah, I guess I couldn't find a good coffee. I had learned how to roast coffee in Australia. I come back to Glasgow and really it was just lots of imported European brands. There wasn't any freshly roasted coffee. There wasn't high quality, what I would call, or the industry would call, specialty grade coffee available in Glasgow. No one was talking about single origins or, really crafting coffees in a really delicious way. So that's kind of why I wanted to, take the risk, start up a business, follow a passion. And I didn't quite realise that, all these years later, I'd still be kind of chasing that, and I'd still be looking to find out how can we make coffee even better, how can we follow international trends, how can we support farmers and always make sure, our customers have a good experience. It's definitely job satisfaction to taste great coffee every day as part of my job. So, yeah, super important.
Do you think there's parallels between the common women at Cardhu and women in business now?
Yeah, I think women always have challenges in life. We always have to support one another. I think anyone who takes actions to improve something or, to be the first or to make a change, whether that's about gender equality or breaking down unconscious bias or stigma, these women at Cardhu, the coming ladies, really did that. And, realistically, 200 years ago, which was a real hand-to-mouth existence where they didn't have the luxuries we have today and hadn't progressed as much as we have today. Yet we're still doing it, and we're still doing it in life, and I think women are always going to have that struggle.
Obviously, a lot of people have coffee in the morning, but you can have coffee in cocktails. So do you have a favourite? Can you tell us a little bit about sort of adding coffee to drinks?
Yeah, I think, the parallels in the coffee industry a lot of career changes and advancements in like mixology and cocktail bars, and we're not looking at like sort of espresso. Yeah, drinking a little dram, and I really enjoy coffee. There's more interesting ways of bringing these drinks together, like using a cold brew and using single origins. Maybe paired with cold brew to create something delicious for their celebration. And I think my favourite is probably going to be that one tonight, and I can't wait to try it. So can attend the event tonight and understand what the women of Cardhu committed to and achieved all those years ago, and can be inspired by that pioneering spirit. That'll be a great success for the evening. I think bringing people together all in one room who can inspire one another is really, really powerful, and I'm really excited about what this event can achieve.
And finally, where's your favourite place to enjoy a dram?
Deer Green's based just off the Gallowgate at the Barrowlands, so our local happens to be the Gate. So I think it's one of the best cocktail bars in Glasgow and has a fine selection of adults behind the bar as well. So yeah, no question, the gate on the Gala Gate, Glasgow. If someone said to me, what, should I do it? I'd be like, yes, of course. I think if you're thinking about doing something and you have an idea and you have a passion and it excites you, I always feel like maybe I should have started a bit early, but then also I hadn't had enough life experience and work experience, and it's going back to believing in yourself, and sometimes it hits a point where you're like, okay, now I feel I can do this.
And I think following your gut with it as well.
Exactly, yeah.
I feel like the gut one is definitely a big thing. I'm sorry, you were going to say something.
I think for me it would be just telling my younger self that, that inner saboteur, that voice is always going to be loud, but just try to understand where it's actually coming from. Instead of trying to fight it, understand that it's trying to come from a place of trying to protect you as well, of not making what it thinks are mistakes. So yeah, for me definitely, like, instead of just trying to fight that voice and being like, no, I can do this, like understanding, okay, what are you trying to tell me? Okay, you're presenting these challenges, and how do I go forward? But working with that voice as well. So that's definitely what I would tell my younger self. Don't fight it, understand it, and then try to find a way forward with it.
Back to Jo now and the tasting of the new Cardhu 200th anniversary bottling. And so obviously it's 200-year anniversary this year. What types of things have you done? And there is a spoiler here, I'm sitting looking at one of them.
So yeah, we have launched a limited edition bottle of Cardhu to celebrate the 200 years. And in honour of our pioneering women, we've made quite a bold decision. We have decided to mature our Cardhu liquid purely in wine cask, which is something very new for Cardhu. So I don't know if you want to pick up the glass and we can have a nose and a taste. So the typical Cardhu notes that you get are apples, pears, honey, vanilla. The wine cask gives it quite a vibrant contrast to that. So what you're going to get on the nose is maybe some of that red berries, that fruity kind of flavour coming from the wine cask. And if you have a little taste, you will still get that, but you'll also maybe get a little bit of cinnamon spice, and you might also get some dark chocolate notes, which is quite unusual for Cardhu. But it does finish on quite a caramel sweet finish, which is typical of Cardhu.
Oh yeah, it's quite spicy. It's nice. It's sweet. So when I smelt it, the first thing I thought was like wine gums, like gummy sweets. So the red fruit kind of, the strawberry ones. But no, it's lively, but there is a real sweetness there. So yeah, it's very nice on its own. I can imagine it's going to be nice in the cocktails that we're having tonight.
So definitely, I would say with the fruitiness that you get from a classic Cardhu, it's much more fresh. It's much more of that apple, pear. You also get that pear note in our new make spirit. That's definitely what you would get in the classic, whereas for this one, yeah, I would say it's more of that spicy cinnamon sweetness, that red berry, like maybe black currants as well. We actually have been making this throughout the year as a raspberry mojito, so that really highlights, and the team have loved it. It's also been great for people who say they don't like whiskey, and also those who think whiskey shouldn't be in a cocktail. When they try it, they're like, wow, I've never thought of putting whiskey in a mojito. So it's been great, but also the liquid itself, because it is very sweet and probably more of that, as you say, wine gum kind of sweetness, it has appealed to a lot of people who potentially wouldn't normally drink whiskey. So for example, my auntie wouldn't typically drink whiskey, but whenever my uncle gets poured a drink, she'll have a little nose and have one sip. So when I poured him this, it got passed to her. And then she said, oh no, you're going to have to get another glass for yourself. So she was able to drink and enjoy that. So I do think that's probably quite a nice reflection of Helen and Elizabeth as well. It's a very open whiskey. You don't have to be a really big whiskey connoisseur to be able to enjoy this. And we've loved playing with the different ways that we're going to enjoy it tonight as well.
So anyone that hasn't seen the Cardhu bottle, it's quite squat and rounded in the corners, and if you just saw the silhouette, having seen it once, you would recognise it again. So is there a story behind that?
The dimples on the sides make it great and easy for pouring. You'll also notice on this bottle that quite prominent is Elizabeth carrying the red flag. So it's always Elizabeth that features on the bottle carrying Helen's legacy with the red flag. It's very prominent. It's quite a commemorative bottle. The packaging's completely different. It's white and red, so that really bold, standing out, reflecting the liquid, but also our pioneers as well.
Which takes me nicely on to the pioneers. So we've met them and we've spoken to them. Could you tell us a little bit about how women continue to be pioneers within Cardhu today and why it's important to celebrate them?
We have a female distillery manager, Rosalind. She has been in the industry for over 20 years. We've got Jo McArcher as our archivist, which is great. It's amazing spending time with her and hearing stories. And then also Eve, who was the whisky maker who created this liquid as well. And she started as a workplace apprentice within Diageo and worked her way to the role that she's in. So yeah, we don't have to look too hard to find the women in these roles. And it's great to celebrate them because they're there thriving and really performing and pulling off amazing liquids like this as well.
So the distillery's had a major refurbishment in the last couple of years. So for anyone that's not visited, what can they expect now it's sort of shiny and new, but also still really old?
Yeah, we're really delighted with how our refurbishment has gone. What you can expect is a much bigger space for anyone who's been here previously. We now have a great animation that will tell the story of Cardhu as well, which is fantastic. And the best part about the building is that this was the maltings until the late 1960s. So in this room, if you look up where we are just now, that is the malt drying floor still in place as well. So you've got the pagodas still in place. And I think what they've done is kept the traditional feel of the maltings building, but they've really made it warm and welcoming, like a kitchen downstairs, just like Helen and Elizabeth would have welcomed people into their house. And the best part about having the tasting kitchen is that now we're able to welcome more visitors and locals just to come in for a drink, a cocktail, maybe to enjoy some of our food offerings. And throughout the year we do run different events as well, and the acoustics in here are amazing when we have our live music sessions as well.
Well, thanks very much for speaking to us again, Jo. That was a delicious dram and happy 200th anniversary.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Kirsty Dagnan. I'm the President of Moray Chamber of Commerce and Site Director for Johnson's Felgen. I've been here tonight. It's been an amazing night at Cardhu, some really inspirational women and hearing some amazing stories about how they have started their businesses through some tough times, and it's been fantastic to hear how they've gone through that.
It's been great, hasn't it?
Absolutely amazing, yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sarah, what have you taken away from tonight?
What an amazing night to hear from 3 brilliant women who have had such energy and passion behind what they do, and they're looking to make a change in their own individual areas. It doesn't matter what gender you are, it doesn't matter what industry you're in. Be bold, be proud and do it.
So we've both got one of the cocktails on our hands. Can you tell me what you think of it?
I honestly have not smelled a cocktail so insane with spices ever in my life. It's a bread and butter old fashioned. The nutmeg, the cinnamon, the cardamom is actually bouncing out. It's sweet, it's rounded, it's actually stunning. And I'm really sorry for all you people listening to this that you cannot be drinking it.
Cheers!
Cheers!
I can report back that a wonderful evening was enjoyed by all, and it felt very empowering to be surrounded not only by great women, but great women celebrating whisky and the industry with sophistication and flair. I think Helen and Elizabeth would approve. Thanks to my guests for being on this episode, and thanks to you too for listening. Please remember to rate, review and subscribe so you never miss an episode of Scran. Scran is co-produced and hosted by me, Rosalind, and co-produced, edited and mixed by Kelly Crichton.
Safe travels home, and thanks for being such an awesome audience. Thank you, and good night.